Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for the nice introduction. In the last session, we talked about the tools that are being used or that are in vogue in the process safety management, all right? But not long ago, there were worthy tools available to analyze the risks when we are dealing with the hazards and what should be the tolerable limit to which we should accept the risk and beyond which we should not. So there's a lot of qualitative thing here, and it is very, very important for us to understand the risks that we are dealing with and the limit, the tolerable limit that the company should know that, okay, this is the limit for which we can tolerate, and beyond this, we cannot, right? Before I move forward, in the presentation, you will not see many things written here. So I would like you to connect with me with all your heart and mind, because this is what we are talking about, culture, right? Where your heart and mind goes into the system, and then only the culture develops. Talking about everything here, and your mind and heart is not into it, you will not be able to respond to it. You'll not be able to develop. So it is very important that you keep connected to what I'm saying here. So how do we manage risks? How do we understand that we are managing risks, that all the corrective things are in place, and if in the event of this risk actually getting into an eventuality, how are we containing it? These are all qualitative questions for which you have answers, but then you don't have quantitative ways of analyzing it. And the tools which are available are also not very accurate. So there is a lot of discussions, and in that discussion, you have seen what has happened. People have explained about Bhopal tragedy and NASA and several other incidents which keep happening. And why is that happening? The culture, the theme is so apt here for me to tell that I may just go beyond the limit to explain you why it is so very important. We are going to talk about the tool, the methodology, the system to analyze the risks that you are handling, the hazard and effect management process. So what is a risk management plan? You need to analyze that what are the hazards. What are the hazards you need to first identify and then make a checklist of it. And the hazards are something you're dealing with, and when it goes out of control, there are only two things that can happen. Either it goes out of containment, which you call it as loss of primary containment, or loss of control. When you're not dealing in the process industry, there's loss of control. Okay? So loss of containment and loss of control are the two things. Please, and then you make a checklist of where all in your plant these things can go wrong. You list it out. And then assess it. So there are several tools which we have been talking for now several years. The HAZOP, what if, the quantitative one, QRA, and there are several other low pass SIL and others. Then by doing that, you do the control. You understand that, okay, these are my ways to control. These are my control elements in the system which will control it, which will not let the risk happen, let it happen into an event. So, and if at all that eventuate, then what are the measures to recover it? We call it recovery measures. Okay, so the terminology which I'm using here may not be the same which you are using in your systems, but we can understand with the definitions that I'm saying here. And this goes on. It's not just once that you do it, you keep on doing it. The application of hazard and effect management process is for everywhere, not only in the process industry. I'm surprised to see it here that whenever you talk about process safety management, some process professionals come in and they talk about it. If you talk about Reliance, it has grown out of that. We have started with the PSM, but here now we are operation management system. Everything that you need, you do in the plant should have a systematic way of doing it, and anything that you do, you say is efficient, should be safe. If you're not safely doing it, you're not efficient. So that process, that thinking has to go into the mind of every individual, okay? It is when you're actually doing a task, we call it hazard identification and task-based risk assessment. That is for every task that you do this HEMP, okay? For the incident management, and you saw the PSM, for any critical activity that you do, okay? How do you do it? We talked about it. You make a checklist, develop the scenarios, you know. Once you have the hazard checklist done, then you have to develop a scenario. We talked about how the tools can be used to develop scenarios. Then you have got a risk assessment matrix, and then the hazard analysis by doing several tools, yeah? Now, you know, the experience is that when you do all this and you go to the management that these are the recommendations, they are surprised. You know, do we have the budget? Are we able to do this? Can you convince me that these are really important? These are the questions that will come back to the team who has done all this exercise. So no, there has to be a process. If you see it here, you have got a risk assessment matrix, and basis which you make a hazard and effect register. Whereas, if this is the hazard, what will be the consequence of it? You just make that for all the scenarios, you develop that hazard and risk register, and you go to the management for the handshake that, sir, we have developed this, and these are the hazards in the company, and this is the register, hazard and effect register, kindly review it. Once that review is done, they have understood, they are on board with what you're doing, then we go to the next step, where you analyze those risks, you know, by applying those tools, which you see it here, hazard, what if, bow tie, and all those. And the company, every company has their own tolerability criteria based on their business requirements. They set their own tolerability criteria, which will tell us to what level it should be left to. Do we really need to do it beyond this limit or not? Okay? Then, once you have done this analysis, go back to the management, do a handshake. Let the management understand at each process that, okay, the barriers have been identified. The barriers, the critical processes in your plant has been identified. And so now whether these barriers are effective or not, all those things will come later. But once these recommendations are in place that, okay, the human barriers, the equipment barriers, and the critical activities identified, go to the management, do the handshake there. Let the management understand it. And then the management will do the prioritization in discussion with the team. That is how a proper HEMP methodology is to be followed. So just after doing everything, if you go to the management, there are lots of surprises, and you get lots of, you get discouragement as well. People do not understand you. Now, in our company, we make a risk register, okay? So there's a risk event description, which talks about the risk, the cause, the consequences, all in different columns. Then who is the risk owner of that particular risk? The name of the person along with the department. Then risk group, in which risk group does it fall, whether it's strategic or commercial, or safety or operational, which we have been talking about from the morning, or it is compliance and control, or it is financial. It's all listed there. Then the risk category, where will it fall, okay? Then you have the risk area, where the LOPC and the stored energy, natural events, third-party related incidents. It can be more, because when you talk about financial and all, the other risks area will also come in. Risk source, from where did you pick up this risk? Whether you did a PHA, or it was a control of work, or an incident, or an audit, from where did you pick this risk? Cause, what's the cause? The consequences, who all will get affected? Then you decide, based on your RAM, worst credible risk. What is the worst credible risk in this? And you list it down that, okay, this is the thing which will get affected most, okay? Once you have this, you will then, through your tool, identify the control and mitigative barriers. Once the control and mitigative barriers are in place, you go to the barrier maintenance. Who is going to do the maintenance? Who is going to make the procedures? Who is going to do the maintenance of these barriers? So all those things are to be identified. What should be the frequency of doing the maintenance? Who all are going to do it? What is the competency level of people who are going to do it? So all those things are to be there. Okay, based on that, you decide the risk, net risk, that is the risk level 2. Okay, and if the risk, even after having all these control and mitigative barriers, are not in control, and company feels that okay, we need to do further, pacify the risk and make it reduce the risk level, then you need to propose control and mitigative barriers, the future impact risk. So we go up to this level. We cannot operate our company if something is lying in a zone where the company has said that it cannot, we do not accept as per our policy. This is how we make the risk register. We have talked about risk control framework in the beginning, somewhere in the morning. So plan, do, check, act. The policy needs to be very, very clear for the company. In Reliance, we say safety overrides all production targets for us. Okay, so once it comes to safety, nothing can be compromised. You only need to tell it properly what is important for the organization to be safe. Then organization and responsibilities are to be built in, standards and resources. You need to have the standard. Which standards are you going to adopt? Or are you going to make your own standards? And the resources is the budget that you need to have. Do the risk management, which we talked about. Planning and procedures. All the procedures need to be made for each and every activity, the critical ones to be made first and the non-critical ones. Implementation, monitoring, and corrective action through the audits and all. Then the review of the management, which is a process to be done on a scheduled basis. Now, this is something which I would like to talk about. How do you correlate hemp with PSM? Now, the inputs from the hemp, the recommendations, the critical activities, the critical human barriers, the critical equipment barriers, they are to be actually be implemented in field, and this is the green one which you see here. These are the recommendations, the action taken, tracking. The critical activities are all part of the process safety management that we are talking about. So when you say process safety management, it is all what you do in industry. When you go to an industry and do something, it is in the wheels of the process safety management. It's not just the process person doing it, it's the maintenance person, it's everybody who is designing it, who is implementing it, for the workers, the trainers, everybody is part of this process safety management. And therefore, if the heart and mind doesn't goes into this, you will still have surprises, bad surprises, okay? And that is why we say the culture comes in. I'll have to rush through because I'm short of time, but this is how the monitoring also takes place. You need to define the monitors, okay? What are the indicators? So process safety incidents, LOPC, how many of it has happened? How many of the external audit points or internal audit points have come up? Learning from incidents, how many of them has been done in the past? And the management review and corrective action. So I'll skip this because I'm short of time. Risk culture. What is risk culture or safety culture? It is the level of awareness of every individual working at all levels in a company about the risk that he is handling. What is the level of awareness in your company? You could talk to a contract workman, ask him about the risks that he is handling with. And that should be telling you about the culture that you have in your company. 80% of accidents occur due to human error. When you say human error, in Reliance, we don't have something like, equipment has failed. It's malfunction. We have removed the word malfunction. Say something has to be checked. Why did it fail? Instrument cannot fail. If you have a SIL 2 certified instrument or SIL 3 certified instrument, why should it fail? So somewhere the competency is lacking. You need to look from that point of view. We talked about this. So we need to behave in a manner to preserve and enhance safety all the time. That should get into the process. When we are boarding a plane, we are at risk, Okay? When we are doing something, when we get out of this hall, we are at some risk. Our mind should evaluate, what are the risks? Are we prepared for that? That is the culture that we need to develop. All the time, brain is working. In the most developed economies, they are very much caring about the safety culture. And that's why everything looks safe there. Even if with big accidents, there's less incidents, there's less impact. So we need to build up that culture here in our country. We need to start doing all this, and the conference that we have got in here, this platform, I wish that this grows and it goes to a level where we have more and more people talking about safety culture. Sometimes people say, if you are so much aware about safety, you will be very quickly be able to adapt to the changes, or a safety issue has popped up suddenly here, how well you can manage it. If your brain is working properly and if you have this hemp exercise going on, you will see yourself doing moves to save yourself properly. So that is the adapting to a safety issue, how good you are adapting to a safety issue. And you have to communicate the safety issues. When you come across any safety issue, you need to communicate. If you're not doing that, people will not come to know about it. Consistently evaluate safety-related behavior. For any discussion or any issue that has happened, you need to evaluate yourself and your colleague whether the safety behavior was proper or not. Okay? So we talked about commitment, continuously, consistently striving to improve the safety culture. Behavior, we talked about. Awareness is how aware we are about the risk that we are handling. Adaptability is how you adapt to a situation, right? And information is how well informed you are about the risk and how well you have informed others about the risk that we are exposed to. And the last one, justness, is very important. Don't ask people to do this if the first 5 they don't have. This is very, very important. The people who are here to just what is right and what is not right for your system, if they don't have these first 5 things, please don't take them. Don't take their advice if the first 5 things are not in place. Because a person who doesn't have commitment, doesn't have the right behavior and the adaptability will not do justice to the safety. We tend to, when we go with the, sorry sir, just a minute. When we go to the management with all this risk register, and somebody has to do this justness, whether this is required or not required, what is to be prioritized, first 5 things are to be first embedded in that person who is taking those decisions. Last slide, I think. Personal predisposition to risk. This is the culture, Everybody comes up with the personal predisposition, personal perception about the risk. They have it in their own mind. They don't listen to what organization says. They have in their own mind, okay, risk means this, and I'll handle it my own way. They are spontaneous, and there is somebody who is very, very compliant also. So then comes the personal ethics. Ethics is, the obedience, the empathy, the respect, and all those behaviors the values that you have inside, those reflect upon the behavior of the individual. And the behavior is how you actually do your work, okay? Now, this behavior will make the organization culture, and whatever the organization culture is will also affect the behavior of the individual. So here it's a give and take kind of thing. It's happening, the exchange is happening here. So organization culture, maybe you have an organization culture, but the individual, how his behavior, he is influencing the overall culture there, and the organization culture is affecting that individual. So that process goes on, and ultimately, if the organization culture is well formed, that individual also improves. And that is the risk culture. Risk culture diseases, chronic work backlogs that you'll see, poor reporting, people are not reporting properly, investigations without identifying the root cause, the investigation is done, but actually the root cause is not identified, procedures not followed, repetitive behavior degradation, barrier degradation, you'll see that the barriers are degrading, corrective actions do not address the root cause, fixes don't stay fixed. If you have fixed it, if you have addressed some issue, it again occurs. So those are the indicators of risk culture diseases. I think I'll stop here. Thank you.